Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this special meeting of Services O&S and the overview and scrutiny committee for the services. I'm Councillor Carol Coburn. I chair this committee, and it's been called just to look at one particular report and appendices and then to make any recommendations. It's going to be live streamed to YouTube, and please, committee members, would you remember not to refer to anything on the one pink paper now, unless you want to go into exempt. We cannot discuss any of those matters in open. So let's move straight on to the agenda. Apologies for absence and substitution, please, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. You have apologies from Councillor Austin and Councillor Barker Lomax, substituting Councillor Philip Townsend and Councillor Rabini.
Thank you very much. We also welcome tonight Councillor Keane, Jackie Keane, Councillor David Monroe, and our new Councillor Lara Cavalier.
Thank you.
Approximately.
It was perfect.
I'll get there. So any declarations of interest before the meeting, Ben?
There were none.
So straight on to the item 3, which is the reason we're here. Can you make sure, I should have said that you are using the up-to-date papers. There's plenty on the table, and it does show you very clearly what is left for one page. And the report has changed slightly, hasn't it? I was hard pushed to find many of the changes, but so let's go straight on then and ask Kelvin Mills, our Assistant Director of Commercial Services, to introduce the report and explain why we're here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. So the paper in front of you looks at the options for a new contract for off-street parking enforcement. So those are the people that confirm compliance in our car parks across the borough. The current contract runs out in 6 months, at the end of September. So we've looked at, as an officer group, 5 different options for going forward. These are detailed in Appendix 1. We recommend at present that we move forward with Guildford Borough Council taking over our off-street parking enforcement. This is something historically Guildford have been involved in the borough on street prior to that going with NSL to Surrey last April. There's a competitive bidding from GDC that shows it offers value for money for Waverley Borough Council. This will be a contract in essence, instead of with Marston Group NSL, we'll be contracting with Guildford Borough Council to deliver the service. So TUPE arrangements sit between the current contractor NSL and Guildford Borough Council. So that's not a consideration for Waverley Borough Council to consider. There are 2 elements talked about in financial modelling. This will be clarified during the TUPE process. So we have looked at the full-time equivalents that currently exist in the NSL contract, and they would be transferred to Guildford if we move forward with this recommendation. On that list currently is 50% of the supervisor, which if that person transfers across, that sort of reduces the need for supervisory experience at Guildford, but obviously squeezes the overhead costs collectively. At that point, we would be a break-even offer. But the expectation is that we will be able to offer, well, Guildford will be able to offer a 32,000 a year saving based on our budget. And what happens with that combined service is greater resilience. So at present, we run with 7 full-time equivalents on the contract. Sickness is difficult to cover. Obviously, when you become part of a larger team, that gives the opportunity for greater coverage for sickness and absences. And strange enough, the Guildford office base is much more centrally located for the majority of the borough than the farm location at the moment. So there's a reduction in travel time and the like. There's a specification that's based upon the current contract. So we're looking at 286 hours per week, and that's 19 hours a day of enforcement. So that's like for like, so it's what we offer, what's offered now, and that's what we're proposing to replicate with the new contract. So we think it hits many of the objectives, A, of the collaboration, but B, in essence, this is a good value for money for waiting for a council and offers an ability to give greater resilience to the service. Hence the recommendation, Chair, that we've currently gone for. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Kelvin. So open to the committee, please, if anyone would like to kick off. Yes.
So, this of course is off street, not on street being done by Surrey County Council. I appreciate practical difficulties, but have officers looked at trying to combine those two contracts? It surely makes sense for on street and off street to be done by the same sort of people. So have we approached Surrey County Council?
We haven't approached Surrey County Council on that option. The reason being, it's quite an interesting one because obviously Guildford was running the on-street provision up until April 23.
Quite.
And what we've actually found when we looked at the Guildford is actually that was detracting from the compliance in your off-street parking, because although you think, oh, we're walking between car parks, the reality is there's a much larger area to cover. And we've actually, when I look at the Guildford figures, I've seen an upturn in compliance on our car parks in Guildford. So we've seen a significant increase. When I say compliance, we're not allowed to talk about, we don't have a target for PCNs, but actually they have more than doubled. So it actually has transpired that it distracts officers when they're split between on and off street. And on street has a much more complex nature about compliance, if that makes sense, David. There's a bit more of a grey area around yellow lines and times of sent. So it wasn't something that we looked at this instant, really, for the experience that I've already seen at Guildford. That's not to say in future that couldn't be considered. The reality at the moment is, I think that's a new contract with Surrey that's sort of embedding across the county.
And so when did it double?
So so they basically, Guildford Borough Council ran the on-street parking on Waverley's behalf up until April 23. And had done for, now I'm going to have to look around the college, but probably a significant number of years. So they're very familiar with the area.
But then the doubling? You referred to doubling it went.
So in Guildford, they ran the on-street and off-street together.
Right.
That's the doubling. So at Waverley, we always had an outsourced contract with NSL. In essence, they've been the long-term partner.
Can I just follow up on what David said, because I'm very worried about this, not about the eventual outcome, but about the process.
Mhm.
Because you've used lots of phrases, I don't mean you personally,
No.
but one in the report of it is assumed this is best value, and I can't find any way we found that out. So, for example, you haven't benchmarked what David mentioned about running the two together. You haven't looked at that as an option. We know you haven't tendered because part of what you're saying is that we haven't got time to tender and therefore we're looking for another solution. But when I went through the document, what worried me was the lack of evidence for some of the statements about this is good best value. And can I just say why I'm so worried about it? Because I read the Solace report. And the Solace report is all about best value. And it sort of suggests that Guildford Borough is failing in its duty to deliver. Well, it says that, best value, that's not what it's suggesting. And also saying that it would be prudent for Waverley Council to assure itself that similar risks and issues are not happening in this council. So what worries me when we don't have the evidence for some of these statements is, are we actually doing our duty in terms of, comparing, going out to tender, getting all the figures, and then coming down with an option that really is best value, not only in financial terms, but also in improvement of service?
Yeah, well, so in financial terms, the benchmark we've used is against the current contract sum that's in the budget. We have spoken with NSL throughout this process and looked at the options. When it comes down to it, this is a relatively straightforward commercial contract. It's based on number of hours and the number of people required to cover that. So we know the cost of the staffing. So the fundamental difference then comes down to overhead costs and profit. So when you look at it, the vast majority of the cost is wages, because you need people on the ground. So when you say has value for money being proven, well, there is no profit in this for a council. You can see it's purely supervisory overhead cost. So that's I think circa 8%, which is very competitive. So unless we changed the number of hours, for example, Councillor Coburn, you would reduce the spend.
But where, you have all this information in your head. Where's the information in my report that apart from the exempt page? I don't want to go into that.
Okay.
I mean, talking about the contract with Guildford, I haven't got enough information to know. I mean, will it be delivered at cost? Will they be charging them, putting in a margin? Well, my issue with all of this is I just don't know whether it really is best value. I know what you're saying.
Mhm.
I trust you completely.
No, no.
It's not that. But, as a member, we are here to look at this report and, understand the issues and work out whether or not this is the best value. That's what we're here for as a committee, for our residents. And I just feel when I read through it, I kept thinking, well, where's the evidence for that? How do we know that? There's one bit in particular.
Which page, Karen?
Oh, two sections.
Hang
For a
on.
section.
Hang on. Yes, I can do a section. It's at the end of 11. Financial implication.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, can we just go back to the key risk factors? Let's just start on everyone before.
Mhm.
And because, it says there's a risk that the current provider will challenge the decision not to go to full tender. And we all appreciate that. We don't actually have any figures for that, though, do we? I mean, I haven't got any figures for that. I mean, we know they might do it. I mean, what sort of costs are we talking about?
So any challenge to the decision means they wish to continue the contract. So there's no cost to that. We would need to assess their challenge and the procurement rules. Now, legal advice for us, it's been clear that would be a low risk, hence the recommendation. And following on from your earlier point regarding demonstrating the value for money, that is something we can certainly bring back into the report if that's not sufficiently covered, because I won't go into exempt, but it's largely based on number of hours plus overhead. It's not a difficult contract to value, so we can do that.
I mean, what I find so hard is so often, legal costs and other office costs are not put into anything. But there is a cost, if you got to defend something or somebody's challenging you, even if you take it in-house. But going on to the other bit, if you look at the financial implications in 11.1, you actually say 2 options have been sent over by Guildford Borough Council. We know are struggling with best value. One, assuming the supervisor said stupid, blah, blah, blah. And it's the phrasing, one assuming, and we're assuming that, it's the cost without supervisor is 112k and would result in an annual saving of 32. I don't know how that comes about. Don't just refer me to the pig paper because it's not that bit that I'm worried about. It's rather the generalisation, if you like, of what is what's being said here. It is also assumed that Guildford will take a more proactive approach to enforcement across Waverley car parks. By whom and why is really my question here. I mean, it may well be true. I'm not denying that it might happen, but it's just, to me, it was just a little bit, just lacking evidence again. All the way through, I kept thinking, how do you know that? How do you know that? And that's what I'm really saying. I feel we need a little more meat on the bone.
Okay.
And I've done a couple of recommendations. David?
Yeah, can I come back, sorry, County Council, I'd like to come back also about this other matter. But I mean, have we actually approached Surrey County Council and asked them to give us a good deal?
No, we haven't. So we could, yeah.
I'd have thought that's, I mean, the prize of having on and off street parking with the same people, and I appreciate they need more training and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. I mean, that's quite a big prize, I would have thought. And I'm not quite sure why it's, you say that actually it's in our best interest to have two separate contracts, no matter who actually undertakes it. It seems to me so obvious and logical that if you combine it and manage it properly, obviously, then it should be better. Have we, for instance, we don't want to make a meal of this completely, but have we actually looked at any other councils in Surrey and beyond
Yes.
who do have on street and off street under the same authority, and what's their experience? It just sounds, coming back to Carol's point, what's the evidence? You know, just a blanket statement that in fact, it's not good. We need to probe that a bit more, I think, and the executive needs to do that.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, we can take that back and add that option in, definitely.
Yes,
Just a thought, Kelvin. I mean, you're saying that this ends in September.
Yeah.
And if we were going to be looking at Surrey County Council, you know, would that give us enough time, or would that leave us without anyone on our car parks, you know, to be overseeing them? That is the problem.
That is, but saying that, that risk is mitigated because it is NSL who are delivering the Surrey contract. So there is, so at the moment, there is some sharing across those contracts anyway. So I would have thought that is a low risk. Yeah.
Because that follows another question I had about, you know, why are we doing this? It sounded from the report rather that we were doing it to show that our goodwill towards Guildford. I mean, yes, the timing was important. We haven't done the procurement in time, so therefore we were, you know, rushing to try and get something done. But we shouldn't be doing something, you know, just for time. Well, whatever happens, we've got to have the best service and the best value service at the end of whatever we decide to do. And can I say Zoe next?
Of course.
Come back.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, so I too am pretty anxious about transferring anything like this over to Guildford Borough Council, given their failure to exercise their duty of best value. I agree fully with Carol with the need for a bit more evidence. I do think a way of mitigating the risk is tendering. The other thing is that in O&S resources, something that we've done in the past 6 months is basically for any key finding, we benchmark. Where we can, we benchmark, and it's not heavy weather. The data's out there,
Yep.
and you know the leaders already have benchmarking data. It's just shared with the councillors, and I would agree with you. We should be seeking to benchmark, because then we can test whether or not we're getting best value, and we can be seen to test whether we're getting best value.
Yeah, I think those recommendations.
We'll get them into a form for you at some point. Yes, David?
Yeah, another point, supposing we do go in with Guildford as recommended, Guildford, I think they have more car parks. I presume they do, the whole borough.
Yeah.
And they're sort of big brother in that case. So we've got to be pretty careful that a disproportionate amount of effort is not concentrated on Guildford. Well, that surely will be the natural tendency. And what are going to be the mechanism by which Waverley ensure that actually we're getting our fair share of cost-effective enforcement?
And that will come down to contract management, as it would with NSL. So we have a designated number of hours per day and per week, and that we basically monitor that on a daily basis. We also would see rotas specifically for Waverley because we want 7 full-time equivalents working on our contract as we do now. So it's exactly this, it's down to strong contract management from Mark and the team. And we do that at the moment with NSL on a daily basis.
And that, which is good, of course, and what we would expect naturally. But above the contract management, what's the mechanism for each council to supervise the contract?
Sorry, explain that again, David.
Well, who at portfolio level and at strategic director level will be able to look at the figures and say, hello, there's something funny has gone on, and what's the mechanism at a senior level to change things or to seek change?
So that would come
two
through
councils.
basically Section 151 and Richard Bates. So this service will sit under his strategic sort of portfolio. The reality is, as we're fully aware, car parking is an extremely important element for the council. There are very clear, stringent sort of measurements on income, PCN, rotas, number of hours that I would report in monthly to portfolio holder, but also to my strategic director.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we have a supervisor role, I mean, that supervisor will keep all the data of where the wardens are and how many hours and so on and so on. So that would be fed back to, as you say, somebody within Waverley.
Absolutely.
And that's most important, because we need to know that, as David said, we need to know that we're getting a fair share. And I feel sure that, you know, that can be seen on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, so we would expect a very clear reporting structure. So we currently have historical data on rotas, compliance, PCN issues, number of hours per car park, per area. So it's broken down by day. That can be uploaded from basically the equipment, so that can be checked against that back office. But that's no different to, we would have to do that with NSL or Surrey. It's exactly the same process that you need to be able to report very clearly where they've been. So there's always questions, comments are less like seen in Cranley, for example, would be, you know, there's less car parks in Cranley. So there's a sort of show, but we were able to demonstrate quite clearly the number they've been. So there's a very clear mechanism back up.
And if it's not working, then it can be challenged.
Correct. Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly it. So we know numbers of PCNs issued historically, and we've been able to monitor that against performance, definitely.
And I gather Graham White would like to speak. Councillor White, are you?
Yes, Graham White would like. Thank you, Carol, and good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well. Calvin, I missed the first 2 or 3 minutes, but I feel as though I've missed quite a lot, or I haven't read my notes very well, so bear with me. This is coming before us principally to agree or disagree that collaboration with Guildford would be the best solution for this project. Is that what we're saying?
Well, to feed back comments to the executive for consideration on that recommendation, yes. Right, because coming from a sort of an engineering background as I do, I always sort of look at boxes and numbers and how it works. And it seems to me that the enforcement of car parks is not altogether a numbers game. You've still got to have somebody move into an area to physically be there and check and so on. And again, I don't know if this is something that, again, we would be commenting on at this stage, but how do we know that we're getting competitive figures from the provider here? Is that assumed? So the figures here are compared against the current contract prices that we have budgeted in for NSL. So that's how we compared the value.
Right, and then the intent would still be to go to tender on the basis that you would be going with Guildford and Waverley property together. We would go to tender and say, we've got...
No, the recommendation would be to direct award to Guildford.
Say that again, Kevin, so I missed that.
Sorry, Graham. The recommendation would be to direct award to Guildford.
So they would have total responsibility for getting best price.
Yes, and the best price are in the papers. So the 312 per annum.
Yeah, I've got it here. Without supervisor and with supervisor.
Correct. The grey area is around the TUPE arrangements of 50-50 of the current supervisor, whether they would transfer or not.
Right. So to come back to my previous question, the prices that I'm looking at here have been tendered. They are the best prices we can get in the market.
They're tested against the current contract budget. Yeah.
Yes, they have not been tendered specifically.
No.
Right. Okay. I mean, my particular interest here is that we're obviously, yes, we're getting best value, and I'm not against the Guildford alliance on this, but I suppose if I was buying this myself, I would want to sort of know, you know, how much am I paying per parking bay for enforcement, and then work out how many parking bays I've got, and say, well, I've got 5,000 and Guildford have got 10,000. That doesn't sound like a very good deal.
No, so it's slightly different. So this is based on, so we have, I've got it in front of me, 3,681 spaces in Waverley. And what we tender is that the number of hours, full-time equivalent hours we need to monitor those car parks.
Right.
So that has been tendered and spec'd at 286 hours a week.
Right. Okay.
So that's how it was built up. It's built on sort of hours on the beat to cover those spaces.
And it is perhaps that hourly rate that may come down if we find a more competitive tender than the NSL model.
Yeah, well, and TUPE says you have to honour the same contractual requirements that currently exist. The difference exists around the overhead and profit charge.
Right.
Can I take somebody else, Graham?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Indicating, Zoe, you were next.
Well, no, I just do think that tendering would really give us a safety net here. You know, if we spend it like it's our own money, we'd all tender for 300,000 contract, wouldn't we?
Councillor Monroe, David?
Yeah, I'd say the exact opposite, really. I'm very wary of tendering. I spent a professional life tendering, and you just spend hours and hours and hours and huge amounts of money. And I've had no personal experience actually it's done any good. But you still get contracts going wrong. And the danger with tendering with an awarding a contract to an untried tenderer is that they go in deliberately low, and you find you then have to put supplementary stuff. Now it sometimes works. I quite agree, but it's a riskier process. And there's a downside risk as well as an upside risk. So I'd personally be very happy if we don't go to tender for all reasons which are outlined in the report.
And can I?
Yeah, yes.
So how about then, if tendering's too expensive, could we, without breaching NDAs, then just get the benchmarking figures from other councils in the area, so that we know whether or not then the number of bays checked per hour is best value?
Yeah, that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah, I think we're all coming to the same conclusion. I think we can draw this and get the recommendations drawn up. I mean, basically, just finishing off at 19 on the report, the conclusions. It says officers recommend the option that provides best value for money and meets the most strategic objectives. My problem is, how do we know they are? And I think we're all asking that question, whether we're using tendering, whether we're using benchmarking or whatever. So can we try and get these, with Ben's help, into something like recommendations? I've been scribbling like everybody else, but I do think we need more specific information on value for money. If tendering is not the answer, then benchmarking is perhaps something we should be doing to make sure that we know that the figures are value for money, because I just don't feel that we've necessarily proved that in here. Further details on separate contracts, going back to Surrey. So can we recommend that the conversation is had?
Yep.
Stop me as soon as I'm saying something disagreement. A conversation is held with Surrey about running the two contracts simultaneously. And you say that's with NSL anyway.
Yes,
so-
it is. So it's the
so
same
we're dealing with the
conversation.
same.
Yeah.
I am still a little bit worried about the openness on the charges with Guildford. I just don't feel so. Again, can you just put something in
Yeah.
to make it clear what the edges are, if you see what I mean? Because we're told that they will charge. I just don't have any figures. Basically, I can't see exactly what Guildford are going to charge and whether it's set in stone. And if we could get a bit more detail on that, then I think we'd have more comfort as well. Monitoring, that was something, if we could just make sure that we have something that's clear in the report that this will be monitored, whatever the decision is.
And reports coming back regularly.
Yes.
Obviously, but
So
you've already said that, Calvin.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, so we get that.
How is it currently monitored?
It's exactly the same. So
Yeah.
we monitor on a daily basis. We get a rota on a daily basis. Who's on beat?
So that process is already in place.
Yeah,
So
oh,
there's
yes.
no need to implement a new process. That's what you already do.
Correct.
No, it's not the process that's the problem, it's the reporting back that's the problem for this committee. Because we have to know, it's funny, I meant to read out at the beginning what we stand here for. And one of the things we do, we are to hold services to account,
Sure.
check that the services are being delivered with best value, check that they're actually efficient and effective and all of that. So it's making sure that these reports come back. And in fact, we did have a discussion on car parks, if you remember.
Yes, we
It was
did.
at the last meeting, because there's a little sort of gap on maintenance, which always annoys me, that if I were slapping tickets on cars or saying good morning to good people who've already put their paid, if I noticed some damage, I would want to tell somebody. And, we've had all sorts of problems in the car parks, all being resolved now. But, to me, it should be part of the role that if you see a faulty rail, you have some means of just putting it back in so that immediately, there's some, especially if it's a rail that actually is important for people's safety, and there didn't seem to be any way of doing that. It was down to the individual councillor who noticed it.
Oh,
no,
I'm sorry you've had that experience. No, in essence, that is part of the
They're meant to do that.
CEOs. No, when we get reports back, so if machines aren't working, if there's areas that need maintenance, barriers, like you say, now from the reporting to the repair, there may be a delay, but that's certainly not the CEO or NSL's fault. But I'd like you to know, councillor, that does exist, and we get that on a daily basis.
Well, perhaps we should include that in our monitoring so that we are, kept up to speed with the maintenance as well of the car parks, because it is so important.
Very
Because
much.
I think I raised it because an elderly gentleman had written to me about it. He was really worried, and we got one bit done, and then the other bit seemed to drag on. And I thought, well, if you're turning up with rails, just mend every single rail that you see. It's a bit like the potholes, if it's a pothole, fill it. I mean, just don't sort of measure it.
Harold,
you know.
don't go there.
I just, it's just the practical side of me comes out. I really do think that, you could speed
It's
up all
something
sorts
that
of
can be
repairs.
done along the way, just a note in their book,
Exactly. but-
the report back.
And that's it. It's sort of a bit more electronic nowadays, but
Yeah,
exactly that. But and there is a 10-year management plan for the car park, so we know on an annual basis the areas that need work. But you are correct. Sometimes potholes appear slightly quicker than you envisage.
So if you have it in-house and you have in-house staff,
Yeah.
then it's easier to implement getting them to report things, because it's almost like you're you've got more control of what you expect from these people working for the council.
To some extent, it's irrelevant whether that's delivered by a contractor such as NSL or an in-house team or another contractor. The key element exists around basically the technology. So that links to a back office, and we would always control that. So whoever runs this contract will be able to report in directly in.
Yeah, it's not the ability to report, but ensuring that they do report.
Ah,
Yes,
right. Okay.
so if it's
Yes.
your employee, it's easier almost from a training and other perspectives to get them to say, okay, this is your role. But in your role, there's also this, you need to report stuff.
Yeah.
And they're held accountable because they're part of your
The team.
team. But if
Yeah.
it's an external contractor, it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, I've got Graham White indicated, but come back, Jackie, and then we'll take Graham.
Yes, I'm just going to comment on the fact about in-house. I mean, if you look on page 19, they're very firmly saying that the cost of the cost would be enormous to actually have in-house. I mean, just getting the team together, getting people, and all the back office stuff that's required. It would cost an enormous amount of money, and I really wouldn't want to support that anyway.
No, for Waverley to bring an
Yeah,
in-house,
yeah.
create its own
Yeah,
contract, it would be
Yeah.
quite a lot of work.
I think we can all see the advantages of working together and having a bigger team and a bigger backup
Yes.
staff.
Yeah.
That's not my issue at all. My issue is this best value? Have we nailed the figures? That's really my problem. Graham, did you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, I appreciate it's not a decision, not something necessarily we're discussing, but I'm quite fascinated. Is this a cost neutral exercise?
So in the papers, no, the idea is to be positive for Waverley Borough Council. So there's a saving on budget of 32,000 a year.
Yeah, got that. But I mean, obviously with the enforcement and the fines that are levied,
I see. Sorry.
Just give me a little bit of background on that. How does that part of it work? Can we just?
Yeah, generally your expectation is that it's a self-financing service in essence. It just generally works out that way. So if you're overstaffed, it would generally cost. It's sort of a bit of that. But sorry. Does that make sense? So the number of PCNs obviously come in as an income. And
Yeah,
that
but
generally
you don't know
No.
really, because the point of enforcement is
It's
not to
compliance.
levy fines,
It's
it's
compliance.
to make sure people comply with it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Does anybody else, Brenda, do you want
no,
to sort of make sure we've,
No, Councillor Hyman had registered to speak.
Councillor Hyman, are you still there?
Yes, my apologies. Yeah, yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Sorry, actually, the messages I got back was that I should have asked you rather than indicating to speak
I
myself.
was
So
waiting for your call, but it didn't come. But you may speak for 4 minutes.
thank you. No, my concern was mainly the issue that we don't seem to have. This shouldn't have been done a year ago, or many months ago, because we don't have time to go to tender. And the issue is that can we make sure that in future that we address these in a timely manner, so that we don't rule out the option of going to tender if that's what we ought to be doing. That seems to be what we've done.
Yeah.
But that was really just the main point, and everybody else has raised the concerns that I have in the process that's been followed here. I don't think there's anything that we can do. The executive are going to do what they're going to do, I think, with this. So, but your comments I'd support, and the comments that you've made, particularly yourself, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we sort of put that perhaps at the beginning, something?
Timing on tender.
Yes,
Timing.
because that really
Timing
is,
is the
yes,
thing.
because
We
that
need to see
really,
it quicker.
yeah, and it's
Well,
not the first time. It's not the first time that we've had to rush things because we haven't done them 6 months earlier. So I think, it is a crucial thing that, this committee and in fact this council, should be doing these reviews in good time so that we have time to go out to tendering. We're not forced into another option that may not, or may be the best option, but that we don't know. So I think that's, we'll add that one at the beginning, I think. So,
I would say
Chairman,
essentially,
yeah, yes, Councillor Hunt?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, my concern really on that level was that I read in the papers that there was a concern that NSL might challenge on the basis that we haven't gone to tender. And whilst there has been legal advice, internal legal advice saying that we shouldn't worry about that, I'm not entirely sure how much we can rely on that advice, because we haven't presumably taken any external independent legal advice on that matter. We might be leaving ourselves open. So really what we've been put in a position, or you, Madam Chairman, have been put in a position where you don't have one of the options available to you. Going to tender isn't an option, and it may be the safest way to do it. And I am just concerned that then we might get problems out of this because we haven't had that option available to you. So, but perhaps if the committee want to look at it from that point of view. Thanks very much.
No, thank you. I mean, I think we have covered that bit, because that's my problem with best value, that, you know, we haven't gone through the processes. So I think it is important that we, you know, do get clarity, which I think we've said to you all the way through. Further clarity on that challenge and estimated costs, and all, you know, just beef it all up a little bit more, so that you know, we have got we've been seen to do what we need to do. I mean, if best value, if you know, if we are in charge of best value is really the key criticism, if you like, of the Solace report, then you know, we're planning just to do a deal with this borough that at the moment is not showing best value, or in fact they say something which is probably true in this council, that understanding about the best value requirements amongst members and officers is very limited. Now, I don't know whether that's true in this council, because we haven't actually been assessed, but I mean, the report does go on to say that we should share it with Waverley, and in fact Waverley should consider having the same sort of scrutiny. So I think, you know, what I'm trying to do with this is flag up the fact that we are aware that we should be delivering that best value, and we do need more certainty in the report. Does anybody else have any specific? Do you want to read back then what we've got? Does it make any sense? Vaguely.
I think in addition to comments, the actual the recommendation or the resolution is along the lines of the report being revised to be able to demonstrate value for money or best value using benchmarking information. And include the consideration of an option of working with Surrey County Council, together with provision of greater detail from Guildford Borough Council. What's the detail on?
The financial proposal.
Greater financial.
So we can, and perhaps detail on the specifications.
Financial and specification detail from Guildford Borough Council, and a description of the monitoring or reporting method.
I can bring that out.
And that includes feeding back to this council.
Absolutely.
To the council. You know, so through this committee.
Feedback method.
To make sure that we're you know, having made the decision that we're monitoring it as well. Right. Does anybody else have anything they wish to add?
I think we've got.
Oh,
Good thumbs up.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was part in error. I just thumbs up to you, Carol. Very good. Well chaired as usual. Kevin, I just again might be being slow here, just to get that clarity between Guildford and Waverley. One of the things I would, you know, I'm presuming these contracts are going to run by territory side by side by the same company. So in other words, we've already said Waverley have got 3,681 spaces. And if 3 of those keep on getting fines coming in, that's all fine and jolly. But that is kept within our contract. Doesn't allow Guildford opportunity to say, oh, we made a bit of a profit here, we'll have some of that.
No, and I will bring that out, Councillor White, to make sure that's very clear in the report about the reporting. No, every car park is coded to every. So we will bring that out in the report to clarify that.
I was just going to say, Councillor Keane, that would be very helpful if we could do that.
I think the executive, if they need that going back to them, I personally can see the advantage with officers joining forces between Guildford and Waverley, but at the moment I can't see any other advantages at all. in terms of how contracts progress, and until we get a bit more certainty, as Carol indicated, from Guildford's own financial performance.
Right, thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to have the last word, or can we declare the meeting closed? Thank you very much, all of you. Nice to see you, Lara. And